What's up, everybody? It's Matt from Night and Day Performance, and we're back on the 426. Today, we're going to start working on the cam install. We already got the short block installed, as you saw in the previous video, and I'm sure it'll be in this video too, because we'll do one big video to compile all of it at the end. So now we're going to install the cam kit that we're doing in this one, and it's going to be the FRP Windowmaker cam. It was originally going to be the Titan 2, however, because we went ahead and did the stroker, and now we're doing a built transmission in it as well with a converter, we bumped it up, and we're going to do the Windowmaker in it. So we're going to go ahead and get that installed. If you're looking for the specs on this cam, they're on our website, nightanddayperformance.com, and you can see the cam specs for the Windowmaker. So now behind me is the 426, as you can see here. And we're going to go ahead and start getting this camshaft installed. We're going to go ahead and get the plate, the retainer plate. We're going to go ahead and get the oil pump installed, timing set, and continue on pushing on this motor. All right, so the cam's in, and contrary to popular belief, I'm going to tell you to do something that some people say you're not supposed to do. However, I do it. There's a good reason why. So here we have the Gen 3 HEMI. We have lifters. On your LSs and on a lot of motors, a lot of people like to soak their lifters before they put them in. Well, if you saw in the video just a second ago, we weren't soaking them. We were actually doing something else. It's called bleeding down the lifters. So within your lifter, you take a little Allen key, and you'll see the little hole in the lifter. And what you're going to do is pump that, and you can see the excess oil coming out. You're going to do that to every lifter that you have when you're doing a HEMI. All right, so some people are going to ask, why would I bleed my lifters down? I want oil in my engine when I start it, you know, things that, yes, you do. And a lot of people are going to be stuck in their ways, which is fine. If you don't want to do it this way, you can do it your own way, but I have a logical reason. Not only have I done research on this topic, MMX has done research, and several other of the major HEMI shops have done research as to why it's better to bleed them down. So on startup, is it going to be louder? Yes. So I always recommend when you first do your fire up, if you bled your lifters down, cycle over the motor, put it on a little charging station, and cycle it over to get some of that oil flowing before you fire it. The reasoning behind it, if you understand lifter designs and understand how they work. So lifters have plungers inside of them. Those plungers move up and down, and inside of the lifter is a spot where oil will sit. So from the factory, a lot of lifters are filled with oil. It keeps them from rusting and everything, corrosion and whatnot. But there becomes an issue if the oil that's in them is not 100% at the right level that it's supposed to be. The thing is, and my logic to this, which will help a lot of people, is you can compress air. Pistons compress air. The engine compresses air. You cannot compress oil. You cannot compress water. Those objects, like the liquids, they can't be compressed. They bend things whenever they try to compress. Inside the lifter, there's a certain amount of oil. Now, when you get your push rods installed, OEM lifters, usually around 60 to 70 thou on the preload. If the lifter is completely full of oil, it's going to have to force the oil out of the lifter before the preload can actually be set or given within the push rod. Now that becomes a problem because on your first fire up, if there's too much oil and it's trying to force the oil out, you're also going to be forcing oil down the push rod to try to feed oil in because of the backwards way that the oiling system works on the Gen 3 HEMI. So when you have oil pushing down the push rod and oil trying to push out the push rod, at some point they're going to deadhead and try to start compressing oil. It's not usually going to work, which is going to make it hang a valve. It's going to make a valve not close all the way. So you're going to have combustion that's not going to happen. You're going to have leaks. You're going to have no compression. And you're going to have issues. Now, once the engine fires up, people are like, well, when it fires up, it fills it full of oil anyways. To an extent, it does. But you got to remember that there's always a preload on your lifters. So your lifters will never be 100% full once they're in the engine that's running. So it's always best, in my opinion, to let the lifters oil themselves naturally. Yes, it's going to be a little louder on first fire up, but it will quiet down very quickly as they pump up with oil. It usually doesn't take a super long time. So if you're sitting there for 10-15 minutes, there's a problem. Usually after about, I say about a minute, you'll see that it starts getting quieter. About 5 minutes, you should hear nothing at all. It should be quiet on the valve train as far as back to where your HEMI, normal HEMI tick is. It's not going to go away. It's a HEMI. But that is the reasoning behind bleeding down your lifters. Because like I said, you have your lifters that are, if they're too full of oil, they can't push the oil out while oil's trying to be pushed down, and the preload's going to be off. So you're going to have, say, 60, 70 thou of additional preload compared to what it's supposed to have. So basically you're doubling your specs. So it's not going to work out right. Doesn't always happen. There's tons of times we've installed lifters, and over the years we used to do this all the time. We used to soak our lifters because we build LSs too, and we've never had issues with it directly all the time. But we have had instances where we have no compression on fire up. We have had issues where we fire it up and we have a misfire. So one cylinder's misfiring and then randomly it starts going away. It's because it takes time for it to actually smooth itself out. So I always recommend bleeding down your lifters. If you don't want to do that, it's up to you. But that's how we do it here. When I build the engines, I bleed them down just as I showed you. I take an Allen key, I bleed all the lifters down so that there's not extra oil in them. I install everything as it's supposed to be. I do put assembly lube on the rollers and the needle bearings, so I make sure those are all coated really good with assembly lube so it's nice and lubricated on the camshaft, not installing them dry. I make sure the bodies are lubricated and all that. I just don't pump them full of oil by soaking them in, and it's up to you if you want to do it the other way. But that's the logic between why you should or should not soak them. It's up to you. Make your own determination. But in my opinion, it's always best to bleed down your lifters. So now we're going to go ahead and get the head gaskets installed. We're going to get the head studs installed, get the head set on here. Before we do all that, we're going to get our timing set installed. I just realized I don't have that on yet. So I'm going to get the timing set installed, head gaskets, head studs, and then the heads installed. And if you've never installed head studs before, how you want to do it is you want to basically put your ultra torque assembly lube that comes with the ARP studs. You're putting it on all the surfaces, so you're putting it on all the threads, on the nuts, on the washers. And so how I do them is I coat the surfaces as it says in the instructions. I hand tighten down the studs, and then I take my Allen key, and what I do is I go to snug with the Allen key, and then I loosen a quarter of a turn. So that makes sure they're all seated down in the bore, but they're not over tightened. So I go a quarter turn loose, and then I install everything. And if you want, you can use Loctite. I don't use Loctite on them. But let's go ahead and get into this and finish getting this engine assembled.